Here we go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Tuesday, the 20th of February, 2018. This is a meeting of the Stayton City Council, and let's go to work. Would all those of like mind please join me for a flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And most of us so want to believe all that. Let's see. Roll call, staff introductions. We've got everyone here that needs to be. Sergeant Meeks from the police department was here. Said he might be called out because he was on duty, but he was our police representative this evening. So let's go on. Announcements, additions to the agenda, are there any? Declarations of ex-party contact or conflicts of interest or bias, etc. Yes.
I have a number of them, more than a dozen, and I don't have names and numbers regarding Sunshine Coffee, which is still, I believe, under LUBA appeal. I've been accosted many times about Sunshine Coffee. I also have many ex parte contacts to declare regarding Pacific Power, and I'd like to, if need be, provide them for the record. You've been aware of them, Mr. Mayor, and I've made the city staff aware of them too. The first was a letter from Pacific Power attorney Kim McGuire, received at 8:14 p.m. on the evening of the 19th. The letter was sent to Mayor, Council, and staff, and attorney Molly Lynn. It contained 4 separate attachments plus a letter. I believe she was planning on distributing those tonight. I'm not sure if that qualifies as an ex-party contact, but I wanted to do that too. Second was an ongoing series of exchanges between Stayton resident and Pacific Power management team member Ellen Meyer, City Administrator Keith Campbell. Mr. Meyer forwarded to, this happened over the holiday weekend. It went to the mayor and the entire council. It did not go to city staff. So I provided that to city staff, and I just gave it to Wally so it can be part of the record. Everybody on the council seen it. If need be, I can review it. It was a note from Keith to Mr. Meyer that was forwarded to us, also communication from Mr. Meyer regarding this. So, you know, I don't know why I've been singled out for special attention, but everybody in this dais received those communications and should declare that contact.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I received 2 emails as well, of which I read the body of the emails, one from Mr. Meyer, one from the attorney. I didn't read the attachments as I didn't think anything was relevant at this point. That's my declaration.
Okay. I also received all of that and sat down and read it.
Right. I wasn't sure that we needed to do that since everybody received the same thing.
I received it but did not read either one of them.
Okay. So
I read about 2 or 3 lines in and also didn't finish reading them, nor the attachments.
that feel good to have all that off our collected chest. And anyway, consent. Are there any presentations or comments from the public tonight? At this time, there's another opportunity a little bit later, but this is one. Anything? Okay, a consent agenda then for February 5th of this year. And you all have it in your packet and have seen it, I hope.
I move we accept the minutes as written.
Okay. Is there a second, please?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to accept oh God.
Minutes.
Last meeting's council minutes on the as a consent agenda item. Would all in favor say no?
Mr.
Say
Mayor?
aye.
Mr. Mayor?
Excuse me, go ahead.
Can I have a point of clarification on the minutes first, please?
Okay, good.
My question is, it doesn't notate anywhere in here that there was a hearing opened or closed last session. Was that indeed a hearing for public record that was open and closed?
It notes that there was a motion passed at the bottom. Does that count? I don't know. I mean, I assume.
That's why I'm asking the question. Is that a public hearing? Mr. Lean, do you know?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were...
Oh, just in general. I'm just asking. No, just asking whoever.
I looked at the minutes, and I think the minutes are fine, and
Okay.
they're also backed up
Okay.
by the voice
Gotcha.
recording and the video that we have. So,
Okay.
like we talked about before, this one was not as formal as the land use ones,
Right.
where all of that stuff has to be
Correct.
very precise.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so any other points of clarification? Anything? Okay. On the motion to pass the last February 5th council minutes on the agenda, as an agenda item, would all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Hearing none, I'll declare the motion passed, and the consent agenda is passed. So we go to, turn the page, public hearing, none, unfinished business. Pacific Core franchise hearing. Staff report, Mr. Campbell, please.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I'm up for this one. Originally, if you will remember, today's session was just to review and adopt the order of approval. So it was sort of a ministerial act, and I wasn't scheduled to be here. Keith is going to handle it. But in the interim, we have had the material that Councilor Cronquist mentioned earlier on, which includes a request for reconsideration and the addition of material to the record. So the first item, I guess, of business for the council would be to decide whether or not you wanted to reconsider the decision that you made at the last council meeting to find Pacific Corp in violation of the franchise agreement. And that would be, if you wanted to do that, you've got two options. You've got a couple of different forms of order in your packet, and you could say we don't want to reconsider, we just want to adopt one of those two forms. Or you can say we do want to reconsider, at which case that would take a motion. The motion would have to be made by someone who voted for the motion at the last meeting. Somebody who was against it is not eligible to make that motion. Once the motion is made and seconded, that takes your prior decision that you made on February 5th off the table. So then the record is open and you're back into deliberations, and then you make a new motion, whatever that motion might happen to be. So that's the process that we're at, Mr. Mayor. The first consideration would be whether or not you want to reconsider your prior decision on this matter.
And to qualify to keep
And
that,
Wally, that would take a motion and a second by the majority voters.
Yes.
by Cronquist, Usselman, and Glidewell, right?
Now, wait, now, come on. Let's not just jump into these.
Well, that was Mullen and, this clarification, I just want to make sure, I don't want to jump into it. Mullen and Quigley voted no, so they can't do it, right, sir?
Right, that is correct.
I just want to make sure we're,
We know, everyone knows who the 3 and 2 are.
Yeah, I just checked the minutes, and that is correct.
Yeah, I knew who it was. I had them labeled. Okay, so, I guess if you want, we need a motion to reconsider that final order for the Pacific Core franchise hearing.
I would make a motion to reconsider.
Okay? Is there a second?
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I should get a second before we do that, before we have
Oh,
discussion
okay.
on it. I don't hear a second. I'm going to declare the motion invalid,
Okay.
not accepted.
So
So what do we do next?
can I still say why that I felt that way?
No?
There isn't a discussion allowed when a motion isn't seconded.
Okay.
It's not, at that point, something that is before the council. So if there isn't a reconsideration, then you have two alternative orders that manifest your decision from February 5th. One is with the fine provision, and then there's another alternative order that eliminates the provision for the fine and only declares the breach and compelling the moving of the poles. I think the first one has both the moving of the poles and the fine, and the second one in your packet is identical up until you get to the order portion, and in the second one, the fine provision is left out. So you have two alternative motions that you can make to adopt one or two of those written documents in your packet.
And those are back on page 8, Wally? Is that right?
Yes.
sorry, I don't
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
So I need a clarification.
All,
And I can ask that without it being specific to, like, I mean, it's just I just need clarification on something. So if we go with, if we move forward from this point where we end, what is the next step? Is the next step that we're in a negotiating position, or is the next step court?
Well, the folks from PP&L have asked for us to meet so that we can talk about solutions and that sort of thing, and the city has indicated its willingness to do that. We're more than happy to sit down with their staff and look at what the options are. They're looking at some different cost mechanisms, I understand, and they're studying the notion of how they pass that cost back to the ratepayers. And the city is more than willing to sit down and work with them on their schedule. So that's the first thing as far as
Okay.
negotiations. As far as court goes, that's up to them. If they want, there's been allegations, well, we're going to sue you, so that's
Okay.
up to
So,
them.
but it's not an automatic. This doesn't take anything off the table if we vote one way or the other necessarily.
No, what
okay.
you're basically doing with this order is you are declaring your city position with regard to the facts that lead up to a determination and interpretation of your franchise agreement. And then, so we make our position, and you're going to do that tonight. And then how PP&L reacts to that is up to them. They have the ability to go to arbitration, they have the ability to do a writ of review in court, but that's all up to them. And none of that, whether what you do today or what they do as far as litigation, stops us from continuing to discuss matters. I've litigated cases and settled them in the middle of a trial. So you're always keeping the door open with the other party. And we're partners. We're not really opposing parties. We have differing agreements on this particular issue, but we're partners in providing this service to the city. And so, we're going to get together as need be and when in order to try to find a solution that takes us down that path rather than down a litigation path. But sometimes they run parallel for a while.
May I be heard on Councilor Gladwell's question?
It's up to you, Mr. Mayor, but I would suggest that you conclude your deliberations prior to taking any more testimony, because by virtue of not reconsidering, the record remains closed.
Okay.
Is there a public comment period later on, isn't there, sir?
Kim, Ms. McGarrett, there will be a chance to respond.
That's
Just-
fine, and I'll do whatever you wish. I think we can answer that question in a different way, but I can provide that whenever you feel is
There will
appropriate.
be a chance for you to say something.
I just hope to do that before an order is approved, that's all.
I see, okay. So,
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve option number 2, which forgoes the fine, the same one I was for last meeting.
okay,
Is that correct, Mr. Lane? Option number 2 forgoes the fine? Have you read it?
Yes.
I second that.
okay, I've got a motion and a second to approve option number 2 of this final Pacific Core franchise hearing, and it goes like this. Option 2, Pacific Core is hereby mandated to move pole number 1 at its expense to a location specified by the city, and to move poles number 2 through 10 at its expense, less the city's obligation for undergrounding the line along Kindle Way, and have all said work completed no later than 1 June 2018. Okay, so there you have it. Is there any other discussion?
I still feel unable to, I still don't, I guess I didn't feel very clear when we were here previously, and I'm feeling even less clear now. And so I hesitate. I guess I just need to withhold anything because I just am not feeling like I have enough information to make a decision. And I don't know what to do about it. Without, because I don't want to do anything that is viewed as not okay, so.
Wally, can I say, muscle up and vote?
There's a motion and a second, yeah, call question.
Yeah, if discussion is over, yeah, parliamentarily, somebody could call for the question, which would move you in that direction.
Well, no, I'm just...
You don't need to be that formal if nobody has anything more to say.
No,
I think your time to vote.
I was ready to ask Alyssa to poll the council, but...
So if somebody calls for the question, then we discuss it, is that?
No, calling the question goes to a vote. It closes discussion.
It's under discussion now, so... And I
Okay.
appreciate the an imperfect situation, ma'am.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody thinks that they can actually help me, I'm more than willing to listen.
Wally, I think that would be you, wouldn't it? None of the rest of us can comment.
But I'm just feeling like I guess I'm feeling like with all of the other information, and again, I did not read all of the addendums or anything because I'm a good girl.
But
I know not to do that. But it makes me feel like there's stuff maybe that I need to know that I don't know, I guess is
We
the
all
way it
received
makes me
those, so we're
feel.
all tainted by them.
So,
It's not just one of us, it's all of us who received those.
right, yeah. But again, I didn't read
It
the
doesn't matter,
addendums,
we
and so,
received them.
and I almost feel like I wish I had, because then maybe I would be clear. Then maybe I would say, okay, then this is the way I want to vote. But
Mr. Lean has a copy of them.
because I wasn't able to, it feels like I'm making a decision not based on all of the information. So that's difficult for me, particularly when we're talking about a relationship between the city and a partner in our community that is really important. And so to start it off on kind of an adversarial way, I don't know that I feel comfortable with that. And again, it's because I don't have enough information.
Mr. Mayor, since we're in discussion, Priscilla, the reason I chose option number 2, which forgoes the fine, was because it's less of an adversarial rule. That's why I made that motion. We forego their fine. I'm not sure, Wally, what the fine amount is. It's $1,000 a day or something.
$240 a day
So-
from January 1st of 2018 until the polls are moved.
But we're still saying that they have no right to any remuneration or to share costs with us to move that poll, right? We're saying that we're holding them totally responsible and not negotiating that.
Yes, the order
Yeah,
that
that's
is
exactly what
involved
the
in
order
the
says.
motion before you
Right.
is an order that eliminates the fine, but it retains
But
the
it
city's
says that they have to
interpretation.
do everything.
Yeah, basically what it says
And that's what
is-
I,
Well, our franchise agreement has provisions in it for who has to do what and pay for what under certain circumstances. And the evidence that has been presented to you through the staff report says that staff position and your position in the vote from last meeting was that under the terms of the franchise agreement, when it's a city-initiated project, the franchise agreement then requires the burden of paying for the moving of the poles to be on PP&L.
right.
And that there's other provisions in the franchise agreement that says PP&L does not have to pay for moving the poles. A developer does, or the city does, even in some
I
other
actually
cases.
understand all of that, but that is, again, based on the idea that PP&L has no ownership or no rights in that area. And my feeling is with all of this stuff that we got in the mail, that there's something that shows maybe they do have rights. And so we're basing a decision not knowing that, whether they do or they don't.
Well, the material that was sent is not really relevant. There is some
doesn't say that.
regurgitation of the arguments that were made at the last meeting. But if you will remember, the city's position is that we received a warranty deed from Mr. Kindle to that right-of-way, and the warranty deed was no exceptions. We took it free and clear of the PP&L easements or any of the underlying. That's what that warranty deed says. And the claims that PP&L are making is that that deed didn't have an effect to extinguish their underlying right, and the city staff and you in your prior order disagreed with that and said, we got a deed. We got a deed from Mr. Kendall, and the deed is to that right-of-way, and the deed has a map associated with it, and the deed on its face says we're taking this with no exceptions.
Right, and so I understand that, but...
So their problem is with Mr. Kendall, not with the city,
Okay.
whether or not that easement still exists. And of course, you know, I told you last time, it's my opinion, that that easement has been abandoned.
What constitutes abandonment?
They don't even own it anymore. The grantor doesn't own the property. The dominant, or the Serbian estate is not owned by the grantor of the easement. It's in the public right-of-way. The public now owns that, and they have an alternative place to utilize their poles, and there's no longer an effectiveness for the easement in the location that will be in the center of the road.
And how many years has the city had that piece of property?
I think the deed from Kendall was 2009.
And so in 2009, the city never told PP&L that you no longer have any rights to any of your poles?
No, that was apparently what Mr. Kendall told them when he deeded it to the city without providing for an exception for that easement.
I just want the city to be viewed as a good partner, not as an adversary. And whatever we can do to make that happen, I would like to make sure that we have done all that we can before we do too much else. And so, like I said, I was totally I got more confused as time went on with this thought and trying to think it through, trying to not do any research, because God forbid anybody should give me any more information about easements or how it happens. But I'm just feeling really confused I think in wanting to be a peacemaker and be a partner in the community, and not being viewed as totally adversarial. I was looking at it just like, oh, okay, this is kind of the way it is, and we'll just go there. But it seems to be a much bigger deal than that.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
I get to be the good guy in this. Not,
Mr. Mayor?
that's right. Yes.
The option number 2, Priscilla, is, Councilor Glidewell, is less vindictive and more accommodating than option number 1 that we voted on last time. That's why I made the motion, we accept option number 2 and forego the fines, because I don't want to be seen as a sledgehammer. I don't want to be seen as not listening. And that is why I chose, of the 2 options, that option. We voted not to reopen the hearing. So if we do nothing and this motion dies, which it can, then we will go with option number 1, which imposes a fine. If we are polled and choose to vote yes on this option, it is the less vindictive of the 2, or less, vindictive is a bad word. You help me, Wally, please, with a word.
Well, it is
Punitive?
there's remedies that are provided for in the franchise agreement, and you would be choosing the lesser of the remedies that you had the ability to impose.
So is it the city's intent then to sit down at the table and negotiate with Pacific Power after this?
At any point in time they want.
I think we just
And
heard this
that's-
10 minutes
that's what I
ago or
wanted to know.
less.
Yeah.
Gentleman sitting over there said, yeah, doors are always open.
Well, I wanted a little more than doors are always open. I wanted to know if there was going to be an intent to actually make an effort to sit down and do
Certainly.
something.
Okay.
And then when we got the second little thing, that kind of put me over the edge from the school district. It was like, just a minute, what is the city, taking everybody to court here? And we'd already been in court several times this year, and so this seems to kind of be the way that we're dealing with things, and it's not the way that I think that we should deal with things. And so I just want to make sure that I'm not falling into the thing that that's how we deal with everything. If we're right, then we're right, and we're not going to sit down and negotiate and do what needs to be done to be partners with people.
Yeah,
That's all.
We never take that position that we're absolutely right and won't talk to anybody. With regard to the school district, we had a powwow with them last summer and sat down with their lawyers and their folks, and there's been ongoing communication between myself and their lawyer. So we're always open to looking at ways to discuss solutions that will avoid going to court or arbitration or whatever, because that's never the way you want to do business. And that's not the way that staff intends to do business. So, yeah, for all of these problems, going back to some of the prior litigation, we've sat down with everybody in some form or another and tried to work out solutions before or even during in the Ryman Snyder situation. We talked about various ways to solve that problem 3 or 4 times during the course of the litigation. So yeah, and I'm not sure that that's been well communicated to Ms. McGarr and Mr. Meyer, but we can tell them right now, call us, set up a time, we'll sit down and meet with you. No issues with regard to that.
It's okay.
Mr. Mayor, I call the question.
Okay, the question's been called. Alyssa, would you poll the council, please?
Councillor Cronquist?
Yes.
Councillor Mullen?
Yes.
Councillor Glidewell?
Abstain.
Councillor Quigley?
Yes.
Councillor Esselman?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Councillor Glidewell abstained.
4 to 5 to 0, isn't it? It should be. I didn't hear it.
Councillor Glidewell abstained.
Abstain? Courage.
That did take courage, let me tell you.
Well, that's all right. Okay, 4 to 0. That one's done for now. Let's see. Let's go to new business. Mr. Ludwig. a
Well,
staff
thank you,
report,
Mr.
please.
Mayor, members of the council. As you know, or you may recall, back in our goal-setting session, we had one of the goals was to go out with and get proposals for new master plans for our community. And in December, we went out for an RFP for a new transportation system plan. We received one bid, or one proposal, and that was from Kittleson and Associates. We currently use Kittleson and Associates for all our transportation engineering needs. You have my staff report there. If you have any questions, I guess the financial impact to the city will be $144,000 over a period of 2 years. And that's really all I have to say. If you'd like me to go through it a little bit more, I would, but you do have my staff report. I'll answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, sir. It's a good report and a good company, it looks like.
Lance, we've worked with them before, haven't we?
Yes, they
You
actually
said that.
finished our last transportation plan after the transportation engineer left town, I guess I could say. And they are also our traffic engineers for all our traffic-related issues here in the city. So we're very familiar with Kittleson and Associates.
They managed to get a beautiful picture of the Jordan Bridge on the front there. This is the 20th anniversary of that being built this next summer.
Here's a bonfire.
I wished it still looked that good, but anyway, okay. Thank you.
That's it. No, not this time.
Mr.
Any
Ludwig,
other
isn't there something
comments?
going on the 22nd, too?
Yeah, I was going to mention that during my staff report.
Okay. That is coming up. That's that meeting at Community Center?
Well, I might as well just do it.
Jump in, yeah. Jump in there.
Yeah,
Come
so
on.
we have our Mill Creek Park Master Plan. Our consultants are holding a open house meeting on the 22nd, right here. Well, actually, it'll be on the south side. It'll be from, I believe it's 6:30 to 8:30. And there'll be several tables and bulletin boards of materials that they're going to be showing us and answering questions to the public and formulating plans for the master plan.
Okay.
So I hope you all can attend.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
all right, yes, Brad.
Lance, I have an actual question about the TSB.
Yes, sir.
What percentage of roads in the city are owned by the county?
Well, that's a good question,
And does the
Councilman.
county, the second part of it, does the county participate in any of this cost of this plan?
They will not participate in the cost. However, they will be participating as a technical advisory, part of the technical advisory committee.
Okay.
But they won't be sharing any costs.
So will anything in the plan that comes out be applicable to county roads? gotta be.
We'll work with the county,
Right.
and that's part of the reason they will have a member on our technical advisory committee.
Okay.
So they can work with the city
Right.
as well as the consultants to formulate a plan that will work for them as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question also.
Go ahead.
So the last work plan that was done, what year was that?
2004.
And so did we do things that were on that work plan?
We have built some roads that are on that work plan, that's correct.
What I was wondering is, when you have, sometimes when you set a plan out, then you review that at the end, and I don't know that I've ever seen, but I could have missed it, like something that said, wow, this was a work plan that we paid $100,000 for, and this was the progress that we've made on it, or we didn't use it because of this, so that we know whether or not it's worth the $144,000 again.
Like all our master plans that we prepared, the growth rate for the city of Stayton was at 3.8%, and I wasn't here at that time, but I can pretty much assure the growth rate probably wasn't 3.8%, and probably
So
was
it
closer.
became inaccurate,
It's inaccurate.
so
And
it
if we're
became
gonna-
kind of unusable.
That's correct.
Okay.
And if we're going to go out and we're going to charge SDC funds for money for new streets, we need to be accurate.
Okay, that's
It's only fair to our builders.
that's what I needed to know.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Mayor Porter, one more question.
Sure.
So after the project, how do we do like a quality assurance inspection? I mean, is that something that the city performs when the contractor says that they're done with work?
You're talking of the transportation plan itself?
Yeah, once they're done doing.
Well, there's several review committees. There's going to be a citizen participation group, and there'll be a technical advisory committee. So there's two committees that will be working with the consultants throughout this process. And the technical advisory committee, they'll have transportation engineers from the Marion County. There'll be transportation analysis from the state of Oregon. There'll be myself, who's a professional engineer. There'll be our city engineer, and perhaps a couple other more engineers that are familiar with this type of work, working with this consultant who specializes in transportation-related issues all over the state.
Sure.
So they have the expertise. That's one of the reasons why we selected them. And then with the citizen participation organization or group, they will be following this along the way, and they'll be asking just those sorts of questions, and we'll be able to answer them. So at least we get this kind of information out to the public. And that's all we can hope at that point. As far as the professional review, that's what that technical advisory committee's for.
Okay, thank you.
And the ultimate rubber hits the road when this plan comes before you to adopt.
Rubber hits the road.
No pun intended.
Not at all.
I thought it was meets the road. But that's all right, yeah.
Not in Vermont.
Okay, staff commission reports. Cindy and Elizabeth's, the number of bills. Everybody's still connected. Looks good, I guess. As long as the staff's happy with it. Anyone have anything on that one? Sergeant Meeks was here, as I said earlier, and he's not now, but the statistical report is there if anyone wants to look at the police report or comment on it.
I just noticed the number of police activities had dropped year over year, but we don't have anyone to answer that, so.
Oh, wait a minute, do that again?
If you look at police activity, the first line, it went from 829 to 7 something. And I didn't know if that was good policing, community policing or whatnot, but they're not here to answer it, so I was going to, kudos lost.
Okay. All right, anyone else on that one?
Catching that.
Well, the incidents dropped dramatically, too.
Public Works Director, again, although we just...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have my monthly operating report for January. I really don't have anything further to add to that. You can see that we had 5 building permits that we issued for in Stayton. Most of those over at Roger Roberts Development, Wildlife Meadows, and so everything's looking good there. I did want to point out that as part of that advisory committee, technical advisory committee, Mr. Fleischman will be representing the city as well as the Planning and Development Director, since this is a big planning document as well. I need to point that out.
So, can I ask Lance a question?
Yes.
Actually, it's more of a so we have the Quail Run place that has all of the bird names, and now we have rabbits, deer, and fox, so now we're going to mammals on this one, huh?
I would love to be able to answer that, because I have my own take on that, but I'm going to point to this guy right here and let him answer that.
Watch the Animal Channel song.
I was just wondering if we were going to do fish next or something.
It's up to the developer.
There is a chapter of city code that addresses the issue of street names and addressing, no pun intended, and it actually describes the northwest corner as being bird names and the other sections, and it was silent about this area between the middle school and Cascade Highway, and those are the names that the developer came up with and were approved by staff and ended up on the plat.
Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Who's next? Dan, Mr. Fleischman, Planning and Development Director.
You've got my monthly memo of what I was up to in January. I'll answer any questions you have.
I've got one, my pet heartthrob. You went to a meeting, a county meeting on the East Marion, that rail service?
Yes.
Was that just to review that preliminary report that came out?
It was, yes, it was a meeting of the advisory committee, if that's the right term, meeting with the consultant that the county hired, reviewing their draft report and providing our comments for changes and questions and clarifications of their analysis and conclusions.
What was your take out of that? I don't know anyone else that read that. I did, but I don't know anyone else. Maybe you're going to be the second person that read it. There may be, there's others
No,
here.
there were a number of us around the table who appeared had all read it. My take is that, one, the draft report, there were comments made at the meeting that were very clarifying for things that were not quite so clear in the staff report and therefore in the draft report, and therefore I believe the final report will be modified a bit, and the basic conclusion is that it is very unlikely to be cost effective to restore service to this part of the rail line. Doing so would require the businesses that are served to be providing I'll call it a surcharge, some others may call it a subsidy to Willamette Valley Railroad.
It's the same thing,
Yeah.
yeah.
And probably to the point that it would not be worth their while it would not be worthwhile for the shippers or the receivers to do because of the cost involved.
Do you see anything in that document that suggested the county or the state wanted to spend any more money rehabilitating that line?
Yes, I think there were indications, not necessarily the county, but that the Oregon Department of Transportation is willing to make further investments in the line if the line is going to be used.
Okay.
As far as, again, the capital investments in what needs to be done. I mean, and that offer has been there from ODOT to Willamette Valley Railway for several years.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
I have a question for Dan also, on that
sorry?
same issue. Could I ask him a question?
Well, certainly.
So when you're around the table, I'm just going to assume that some people talk about the future and about what we're going to do transportation-wise if we don't have rail or alternatives to trucking and other things. Was there any more futuristic thoughts, I guess? And just in like looking at Europe and looking at the East Coast and looking about how you're getting people places and you're getting things places, we're going to have to do something at some point, right? Or is everyone just thinking we're just going to put more trucks on the road and it's going to work? Or, is there any talk, I guess, about that?
Yes, there is, but the question is for this, whatever it is, 17 or so mile stretch of track from Silverton to Stayton,
That's not going to make a big difference.
is there enough business to make it worthwhile to start up an engine and get down here? And the conclusion is probably not, unless the customers are going to be paying so much that it isn't worth their while doing. If there was an additional customer, if we could get a new business in Stayton on the 75 acres of vacant industrial land that we have, that was going to be a rail customer, then perhaps maybe, but that's a big, that's a big if and a big perhaps maybe at the end.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Dan, I was I ride my bike down Evergreen, and I think I saw a public hearing sign.
Yes.
Can you tell us what it's for?
There will be a public hearing next Monday night before the Planning Commission on the application of the City of Stayton Public Works Department, who the city has obtained a temporary easement from Norpac Foods on a portion of their property on North Evergreen to reestablish the community gardens at that site.
Okay.
I was going to wait until we went to the planning commission before I brought it, but that's what it's about.
I think once the sign's up and we have an opportunity to tell people of a public hearing, it's always a good opportunity.
Okay, good, thank you. Moving along with that. Any other questions or thoughts for Dan and Sergeant Meeks is back. We went through the paper police report. Comments or thoughts on what the department's doing recently, soon?
There's only one thing I was planning on, Mayor and Council, there's only one thing I was planning on pointing out on the staff report. You may notice from the two titles, the police activity and investigated incidents. The one difference there is just due to the way we're reporting it now. And Chief Stevens can come back and explain that in a little bit more detail. But that was one thing that we wanted to point out, is just the investigated incidents, the numbers are quite a bit different. There's not a difference in numbers or activity. It's just a difference in how it's being reported. If you look at the top, the police activity is pretty consistent, and those numbers are still the same. It's just the way the investigated incidents are being reported. So if you notice that, I thought that was noteworthy. And then additionally, just one of our upcoming focus for traffic is focusing on speed. The next few months will be our focus for traffic enforcement. So.
Are we still catching lots of people talking on cell phones and driving and texting and all this good stuff?
I think we always will.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Sergeant. And Jana, library report. Let me say that art display exhibit over there is very nice, very nicely done.
Mayor and Council, you have my report before you. We had a busy January, and the art that the mayor referred to is almost gone because today was just the first day to pick up your art. So hopefully you guys made it in to see the art show. I'd like to invite you guys to our Dr. Seuss birthday celebration, which is not this coming Friday, but the following Friday. And it should be very fun.
Okay. Thank you. Questions for Jana? Anything? Okay. Presentations, comments from the public. Ms. McNair, your chance.
Thank you. Council, again, for the record, my name is Kim McGarr. I represent Pacific Power. As you all know, we asked yesterday and before that through Alan Meyer to reopen the record and for the council to reconsider the decision that it made on February 5th. Particularly what we asked the council to reopen the record was to get additional facts in front of council that we think are critical to the decision that you made, particularly with respect to questions about the title to the property. We have provided both city staff and council with definitive proof from a title company that is completely independent that establishes that Mr. Lean's representations to you that Pacific Corp's easements have been terminated is just plain wrong. I asked council to reopen the record. I asked council to reconsider that decision. I understand that, and I signed up to address council on that issue and was told before the vote that the record would need to be reopened for me to be able to do so. I respect the fact that council elected not to reconsider the issue. That is, of course, your prerogative. However, questions were then asked about the effect of the order that you approved today, and I again asked if I could address council about that issue before you voted so that you had full information, because Mr. Lean's response, I don't believe, was fully accurate, and only Pacific Power can really disclose what the next steps are, which was the question that Councilor Glidewell asked. And again, I was refused the opportunity to address council on that issue before you voted. However, in the face of Councilor Glidewell's questions about the fact that she felt uncomfortable voting given the fact that there appear to be important facts that were not considered by the council or which were misunderstood or misrepresented to council 2 weeks ago, Mr. Lean then went on to essentially argue his position again to council. This is a fundamental denial of due process. If you decide not to reconsider the decision, then you don't get to reconsider the decision. If the record is closed for one party, it's closed for both parties. But what happened today is that Mr. Lean was given the opportunity to re-argue his decision, his position, but Pacific Power was not given that same opportunity, and I think I just want the council to know that I believe that to be a fundamental denial of due process. What I do want council to know with respect to the question that Councilor Glidewell asked, which is what are the next steps, if you had been able to defer your vote today, which is one of the things that we had asked that you consider, we would have been in a position where we could have been in a better position to sit down and try to come up with a resolution. Pacific Power is working hard to relook at the estimates and relook at funding mechanisms and try to find a way to move together in the partnership that everybody has mentioned today. Unfortunately, we have statutes in place that define when certain things have to happen. And the answer to your question, had I been able to address council, is that Pacific Power has a very limited period of time in which to petition for judicial review of the decision that you made today. Had you not made the decision today, had you deferred it, we wouldn't have that clock running. We now have that clock running, and it's a very short timeline. So we are, in fact, if we want to review the decision that was made, we are in a very limited time period and compelled, to do so now. So I simply wanted to put that on the record since I wasn't given an opportunity to do so before. We will, of course, continue, as Mr. Meyer has stated to all of you, work with the city staff to try to come up with a resolution. We have a very limited time period within which to do that now. Nothing about this decision changes that position from the company. With me, just to not to be remiss, is Chuck Ford from Pacific Power, because Mr. Meyer is out of town and he is helping the company work on revised estimates. We're hopeful that we can sit down, engineer to engineer, try to get a better idea of the design and the plan, because we don't have that yet, haven't had that, and try to come up with a solution. But unfortunately, it's too bad that we weren't given an opportunity to defer this matter or to look at some of the additional facts, and given the same opportunity that the city staff was to address council on this issue.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Go ahead.
The fact of the matter is I set the full set of plans to the road to Pacific Power. I believe it was June 8th of 2017. You've had a full, yes, I have a record of it. I sent to Eddie Steiner of your office. I just want that to be pointed out. They've had a set of plans of Kendall Way since June of 2017. That's all I have.
Okay.
I have a question about the community garden that I didn't get in.
Go ahead. She who is afraid to vote. Go
I
ahead.
wasn't afraid to vote. I just didn't feel comfortable voting without all of the information. The community garden that you said that you were going to do, what has there been something done, or has there been some reason, I guess, do you have any kind of data that shows that the community's interested in a community garden? The reason I ask is the last community garden didn't seem to be utilized very much, or at least that's what it looked like to me. And as a matter of fact, it was an eyesore, like most of the time. It looked pretty bad.
I will speak to what I know. Okay. So when I first started here, the year prior to that, the community garden was filled. Mm-hmm. Every spot was rented. The second year I was here, there were fewer because people were stealing vegetables. And then Dennis Vetsky used to be a part of the Parks Board. He used to run the garden down there. He used to take his vegetables over to the food bank. Well, he's no longer there. And one of the things I've been going on personally is that when I brought this dog park to the city council, the dog park committee told the city council that we will find a place for the community garden. They made that promise. Yeah. And since that time, they've all disappeared and left it up to me to take care of this. And so what I've done is I've reached out to our friends at NORPAC, because we have a very good relationship with them, and asked them if we could use Clarence Adams' old garden spot, which they allowed him to garden, to take food and vegetables to the community garden. They thought that's a great idea. They've given me a 3-year temporary easement. They're actually going to purchase a sign calling it the Clarence Adams Community Garden, and they're going to put that there. So that's really what I've been working on. But as far as hard facts, the only thing I can tell you is prior to me being here, I was told that we were renting most of those spots until people were stealing vegetables.
Because I don't need to tell anybody for the 20th time that I was a social worker for 50 years, and I worked with community gardens. And I can tell you that the people who use community gardens are not the people that people think are using the community gardens. And but I think that one of the things that you said answered my question. One of the little things is you said that you understood that people quit using the garden because of the theft, and perhaps this new location will stop that. And so your thinking is that people will again start using it because of the change in the location.
I believe one of your brethren
Yeah, if I
Councilor
could.
Conquest had a guard spot down there, and I don't believe he even got anything out of it.
Yeah, Councilor Gladwell, I had a garden spot 2014, 15, 16, and I think I shoot it in the 17 because of rampant theft. 2014.
So do we want to use our
Could I-
resources so
could I-
you can have a garden spot, is what
Ma'am,
my says. That's my question.
Ma'am, it's a community garden for all community members, and there's a $15 charge, which I don't think covered water, or at the time, there was a $15 charge. It was a great social outing, and the first couple of years, there was everybody there. But by 16, the theft was rampant. We didn't get anything out of our garden. I put up trail cams, and I sent trail cam photos as to where it was going. It was being blatantly stolen by people in that neighborhood.
Maybe needy people, huh? Well, most people think that low-income people use community gardens, and that's not the case.
No, it was a very
for who
social
use. And so
community thing.
we are now giving,
But also,
we're
Councilor
giving you money to have a social
Councilor
outing.
Gladwell, as a
When is
member of
that?
the Parks Committee, there was a Parks survey a while back, Mr. Ludwig wasn't there, as to what people wanted for their parks, and I believe community garden was top 10.
I couldn't answer that. I don't recall, but there was a survey done.
Yeah, community garden was in the top 10, and Councilor Quigley and I believe City Administrator Keith Campbell made mention when the community garden was to dog park that there was a lot of activity for people who were wanting a community garden.
I didn't have any problem at all
Piece of work.
promising that we would try to relocate that community garden when we built the dog park over on Florence.
Excuse me,
problem.
sir, I didn't,
That's where you got the idea of using that Clarence Adams from moi.
that's correct. You were the first one to bring it up at one of my Parks Board meetings. That's correct. In fact, you met with Randy Benz that started this off, and then I finished those conversations up.
No, but that's a goal to have that.
So when is the meeting?
Well, good.
When is the meeting?
The community garden
Yes.
meeting? It is, Dan, February?
The Planning Commission's public hearing on the site plan review application is next Monday night, 7 o'clock in this room.
So you recommend anybody who has an opinion show up, and that's when we'll hash it out?
February 28th?
Well,
Yeah, I
if-
believe so.
If the opinion is about whether the criteria for site plan review are met, then that's the place to come and voice it. If the opinion is whether there should or should not be a community garden, that's not for the Planning Commission's site plan review.
That's not it.
My plan is, if it goes through the Planning Commission and the Planning Commission votes for the application, that I will be bringing it to the City Council for their final approval, their blessing.
Right.
That was my plan all along. So you will see it again.
Yeah. One of my things was I was hoping that you were going to tell me that there was going to be another Dennis Vetsky that was going to step forward and kind of spearhead that.
You know, my plate is really full.
Yeah.
I haven't been out looking for Dennis Vetsky's. He was a great person to be running that, and, you know, if we find one, we find one. My goal here is to at least present something to council, because that's what we promised when we took our other one away. We said we'd find a place, and if nothing else, we have a 3-year temporary easement, and if it doesn't work out, the easement gets vacated, and the NORPAC airs the property back.
Okay. Thank you, Lance. Anything else on that one? Let's go to business from the city manager, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing this evening.
Okay. Business from the mayor. Nothing else this evening. Business from the council. Nothing. Future agenda items. Annual OLCC license renewals. Wonderful. And with that, the magic hour approaches. Let's go home.